And so we know that AI is runs on data, right? It's thriving on all of this information. So every photo, every search, every location pin, all of these things, it just becomes part of the training fuel. For me, this is a little problematic because the more data that we collect, the more vulnerable we become. I know sometimes in speaking with younger users, they say things like, "Well, my dad is out there anyway. They can have it if they want it. It doesn't really matter. They have everything anyway." And that's kind of tough to hear because I still think that we can kind of place some limits on this data dilemma about how much do we give away. And yes, I understand that there are issues like facial recognition, right? We love having facial recognition to open up our smartphone, but then what about when it's used for surveillance? Then what are we thinking? What about for biometric tracking? What about every time you go through the airport, right? The airport is a different place because and this is me remembering from a criminal law course 30 years ago. But if I remember correctly, when we go into an airport, we are giving them permission to do all of those things, to track us, to look at us, because we are going into that airport, into that space, which is why we go through metal detectors and we go through the biometric scans, and that's the price that we pay if we want to fly, which I find really interesting. And it seems to be that might be what we're also saying now with generative AI, is that that's the price we pay if we want to play, if we want to use these things. So even when we're talking about smart cities and our health apps, the number of young women that I see and hear who are a little bit concerned about putting personal information about their health into apps. Where is that data going? How is it being used? What's it training for? These are real considerations, and these are real concerns. And I think it's great that we do have people who work privacy and ethics and data because it's very needed. We have that as well, not just for artificial intelligence, but we have that for most technology. Something that I work with a lot is children's privacy. Family privacy, because how much are you able to want to use technology or be on a platform, but you still want that information to stay only on that platform and not be shared out with third-party users, etc. So that kind of leads us to a bunch of ethical questions, right? About all of this stuff. Who even owns our data, right? And when you sit there and you think about it, and we're churning out so much, who owns it? Do you still own it when you freely give away this information? And when you're giving it away, can you truly consent? I know for myself, and I'm sure that some of you as well, that anytime you're going on an app or a platform or a website and it says accept cookies, reject cookies, you know how fast it is just to click accept, and you just keep on going. I've done it too. I still do it because sometimes when you hit reject cookies, or you don't consent, what happens? You lose access to that website, that platform, to that technology, and nobody wants that. We all want our stuff, our tech stuff. So we all have this tendency to just kind of accept or to consent, but can you truly consent? I don't think so. I really don't. And I think we're going to start seeing more about that in the future. And I think we also have to realize too that many of these algorithms, they reinforce existing biases. I think it would be so interesting, and I haven't done this exercise, to look at algorithmic biases around the world. So for example, if we had a user in China, in Russia, I know we have somebody in South Africa, in India, in France, and even in California versus New York versus London, I think it would be really interesting to see that algorithmic bias and what they are being served up as opposed to what we see, here and there. And the reason why I say this is because we do know that these algorithms, they reinforce existing bias, because that data is already biased. And so it's going to equal biased outcomes, right? And let me give you an example of how I know part of this is because when I was a law professor in Paris, I had all of my different students and I had them take out their phones and do just a simple Google search. And I had them write who is Macron? And Macron is the French president. And had them, who is Macron? And depending on where they had been using their Google search and what countries, the results were different. How can the results be different, right? It's just how can they be different? It's the same person. It should be standard, right? So this is how I know that algorithmic bias, that it still exists. It does happen. So already when we're talking about ethical AI, it has to start with ethical data. It has to start with data that is diverse, because otherwise we're going to have a world that does not look like us on the call, that does not sound like us, because we're all from different places, and it will just be, Silicon Valley people that are being represented and not the rest of the world. So we need that diversity, we need that transparency, and we need this data to be responsibly managed. So one of the things I wanted to make sure that I talked about, because I knew that I would be scaring you all because you're thinking, oh my gosh, the ethical considerations, is to make sure I gave you some strategies, right? Because I think that with all of these things, as we're talking about technology, artificial intelligence, of course, there are strategies. There are things that we can do to make sure that we optimize the benefits and that we reduce the risks. So, how can we reduce some of the privacy risks that we see? Well, believe it or not, there are things called privacy by design principles. So, what does that mean? Privacy by design means that whenever somebody is designing a product, an app, a new sort of technological feature, that they start as they design it, they start and they're thinking privacy by design. Privacy is already baked in from the very beginning. It is built into the system from the start. So you have privacy by design, safety by design, well-being by design. So again, I think I might have used this example before, but I like it, so I'm going to use it again. Think about it this way: if we were making a cake, and we were trying to make our cake, and let's say we wanted to say nutritional by design, right? So as we make that cake, we're going to try to find the healthiest organic ingredients to go in it, so that way it is nutritional by design. We didn't just take, the previous recipe that we used, or pull down a box from the shelf and just add eggs and milk, although no shame, because I love those cakes because you can eat the batter really quickly. But we went and looked up all the different ingredients. Perhaps we even went to a farmer's market and bought something special. That is baking things in from the beginning. That is building systems intentionally and with design. That is privacy by design. And when we use those principles as we build out AI, we are ensuring that we will have the best results. So that's one way to reduce the risk. Another way is to strengthen data protection laws. You have all heard about GDPR, which, if I'm not mistaken, came out, I want to say May 25th, 2022, but I could be mistaken in the year. But the whole idea is that there are just these general rules for data protection, because the European government, European Union, recognized that we needed to protect data, and this had a worldwide consequences. And so now we see many sort of data protection laws around the world, and we even have an Artificial Intelligence Act. Look at that, people! They're thinking about us in the future, and so we have these stronger data laws, and they can help. I do think it's kind of wonderful that a lot of these things started in Europe. That's just me, just saying what I think. I also think that promoting data minimization, right? So we don't need to have tons and tons of data out there, and we can also anonymize some of the data, right? You don't need to know everything about everyone in order to still understand some of the results and some of the final lessons learned. And something else that I've talked about again and again is this sort of digital literacy, this idea of knowing how our data moves. How can we control it? This is the same whether we're talking about, using your smartphone, a tablet, a computer. Digital literacy is just huge and it is so crucial and important. This is the way that we empower individuals, our children, everyone, how to manage their own data rights, how to manage their own responsibilities.